So we're going to talk about the end of the year transitions. It's exciting time for everybody. Kids are excited, teachers are excited, parents are excited, but it also can cause a little bit of stress as well. So we wanted to just help you ease into the summer so that it's a time for your children to spend with you with some closure to the end of the school year. I'm sure there's going to be some celebrations, there might be some tears, and we're here to help you with that smooth transition. So the next slide, Tim.
There you go.
So transition is the process or period of changing from one condition to the other. And as we have talked about this, it's pretty much going from one culture to another culture. And so we're going to really talk about what that looks like, because you're going from the kids being in school full time to them being at home full time. Even if they're going to be participating in sports activities, they might be in camps, they might be going to summer school, but it still is a shift in culture. So these are kind of the things that we wanted you to reflect upon. One is the end of the year celebrations. It's always great to kind of talk to your kids about how they want to close up the year. A lot of times in our Montessori classrooms, we actually close up our year. We have ceremony around it, and it's sacred to us because we've spent a whole year together. So it'd be great to start having those conversations with your children now about how they want to celebrate that. They might want to bring in treats for the whole classroom. They might want to write their teachers a beautiful note. They might want to bring them in a gift. So you want to talk to your kids about how they want to wrap up the school year with their teachers and with their friends. Do you all have any suggestions for parents?
Well, I think that parents will often help their children to think about what they want to do. And you've really talked about a lot of them. People will often want to give a book, or, you know, like a Montessori book that they think a teacher would like, or maybe a photo album of the class that parents may have gathered pictures that were taken over the entire year and turn it into a little bound book that they give the teacher. There's so many different ways they can do it. And schools often organize these end of year things. They may have a picnic or a water slide day, or they may go to a parent's house where there's some sort of party held. Lots of different ways that schools do it. And remember, at the moment we're talking about anything from an infant who probably is not aware of the transition to someone who's in middle school or Montessori high school who may be all too aware of it. And the idea is for us as parents to think about how do we help our kids prepare for the end, because that can be bittersweet. The new activities that are coming up can be anxiety producing in some cases. And we definitely want to help our children and ourselves to demonstrate gratitude. Dorothy, what are some of the things you've seen over the years?
Well, picnics, of course, at the end of the year are always very popular, but some of the things that I've seen teachers do to mark an end of the year might be to make a sort of a placeholder. I've seen stepping stones where each child contributes. You know, they're a precious gem to a stepping stone. Lots of activities similar to that where each child is somehow leaving their mark physically in some concrete way to kind of announce that, you know, Johnny was here for this year.
And I have two suggestions for something you can do at home. This is always fun for parents to do. Is I'm sure you have a place where you've kept all their things that they would bring home from school, or at least you have curated some things that you've kept. And it's nice to kind of have a little museum with your family and display it for an evening night and have the kids walk through it. And then they can talk about their memories of the whole school year and why they chose those things to come home to. And then you can decide what you want to keep together. Another thing that's really fun to do is create a time capsule. So every year in instead of holding everything, some parents do that, which is lovely. My mom still has a box of all our things, but you can create a time capsule with your child and they can decide what they want to put in there. And they can even write themselves a little note. So when they open it years later, they'll have a message to themselves. But this is such a great way to kind of end out that school year, talk about all those great memories, and it's a great time for reflection.
Good point. So again, we're helping our children to prepare for the end. We want them to appreciate what they've done, to celebrate the time they spent together, and whether it's the creation of a scrapbook or I remember when I was at Berry, we would actually produce hand-bound books where we put in our favorite work and reflections. And of course, very different when you're 3 from when you're 12 or when you're 15.
Right.
So, be realistic about where your child's at this point.
And we talked about being prepared for a variety of emotions because especially in Montessori communities, we get very, very close to each other. We're a tight-knit community, especially if they've been 3 years in an environment, or some of them are leaving the environment altogether. So there's going to be, as Tim mentioned earlier, that bittersweet feeling. And so we just have to be aware of that as parents and help them remember that you can keep in touch with with friends. You can keep in touch with teachers. And the school is always a home that will welcome them back. That's the one thing about alumni is we love them coming back. And we always try to provide opportunities for them to support their school that they used to go to. So just remember that they're going to have those emotions. They might act like it's not a big deal, but you might see it come out in different ways. And also you might want this is a great time to help remind them of other transitions they have gone through before and remind them, remember this time when you were in kindergarten and you were leaving that classroom, remember how you felt and remember what it felt like to start a new place, and then within weeks you were fine. So kind of go back to those circumstances, and this is always a great opportunity for parents to talk about times in their life where they had a transition, how they felt, and actually how they worked their way through it.
And sometimes that transition is expressed in unusual ways, where as classroom teachers, we see children start to bicker with one another. And there's actually studies that were conducted with military families before a prolonged separation, that actually that bickering helps that transition to happen with a little less pain. So if you're noticing some snarly behavior at home, that's a way of saying, I'm kind of protecting my heart that this transition is occurring.
I'm glad you brought that up, Dorothy, because that is so true. And what's also really lovely about Montessori environments is teachers, guides will show their true emotions. And so they will, talk to them about how they're feeling. And it's not uncommon for teachers to have tears and to process with the kids how they're feeling as well. So kids don't always feel alone, or they don't feel that they feel that their emotions are valid, and that's what we need to do as adults, to just validate their emotions during this time. Cheryl, can you hear us? Talk to us.
I can hear and talk now. Yay!
Well, good.
When internet's fixed.
So we had agreed we were going to go through Kate Barado's 5 hours of culture change, and maybe one of you could explain what that has to do with transitions, because what this topic today is all about is helping ourselves and our children smoothly, or as smoothly as possible, prepare for and go through times when one part of the year stops, things change, and then perhaps something new is coming up only a month or two later.
Well, when I was looking at transitions and just doing some research around it, I actually came across this article by Kate Barado about the 5 hours of culture change. And she was talking specifically about moving to a new culture. But for me, it made a lot of sense because whenever we have a change from school to summer, we're kind of moving to a new culture. it may be the same place, but inside us, it's a new culture and maybe different time, different things that we're doing. So that was our thought behind using these 5 R's, and we'll go over them one at a time. So
We will. Just as an aside, you may be in a part of the world where there really is no extended summer break. You may have year-round schooling with just relatively shorter breaks, or you may be homeschooling your children. It all applies. So anytime there's going to be a transition, whether it's we always go to the beach for 3 weeks or 2 weeks or 1 week, or we go on a road trip, or we go camping, anything that brings in a change, whether it's adopting a new puppy or maybe 2 puppies, anything that involves change, especially a change in routine and schedule, what we're trying to do is minimize the stress of it. So let's look at the 5 R's of culture change. Cassie, you want to take first one?
Yes, so routine. We talked a lot about last week, hopefully you saw it, about consistency. So I kind of like to call this routine light because, again, it's not going to be the exact routine that you had during the school year, but you want to keep it as consistent as possible. And as Tim said, you know, this goes for holidays, for vacations, for any time it's just a disruption in the regular routine. So keep it as consistent as possible. Again, you want to allow for flexibility, and you might have wake up time a little bit later and the time they go to bed a little bit later as well, but you want to be as consistent as possible. You also want to make sure that you're scheduling some downtime. I think sometimes we feel that we have to make sure that our kids are active every moment of every day, and that's not healthy for them, and it's not healthy for us as parents. So we want to make sure that there is some downtime factored into every single part of, or not every single part of our day, but into our daily schedule. And also try to keep our healthy habits. So again, make sure that they're getting up and getting dressed, make sure that they're still brushing their teeth, they're having good, nutritious breakfast, they're eating their lunch, they're not just eating Cheetos all day. I know how I can get in the summer. So keeping that kind of expectation of, as a family, this is when you go back to your family values and you talk about, okay, this is summer, but we're going to keep to our values as a family. We're going to keep healthy. We're going to make sure that we keep the peace in the household. We're going to be committed to the schedule as much as we can. But it's a great opportunity to also show that there's some spontaneity involved. There's some time for joy, and there's time for like my dad, he would always, during the summer, he would always just get us up sometimes early and say, we're going fishing. And so, and that wasn't the plan, but those are our favorite times. Those are the things I remember. I don't remember everything about the summers we do, but I remember those times that I spent with my parents and when it was spontaneous. But we were able to do those spontaneous activities because we had schedule and expectations through the rest of the time. And so those times were easier to accomplish.
So before I move on to the next one, I just want to circle back because we call this Montessori family life. Montessori in the minds of a lot of people is really children doing pretty much whatever they want. And yet we're sitting here talking about routines and the importance of consistency. And I just ask you as parents or as teachers, think about this idea, freedom within a prepared environment. There's a lot of structure, there's a lot of consistency, but within that consistency, there's a plan that allows children a fair amount of choice about what work they would like to do, where they would like to be, who they want to work with, and it's not perfect freedom. And when we go into a different period, whether it's winter holiday break or the bigger summer break, wherever you live in the world, we still are looking to maintain as many routines as possible, because what we don't want to do is undo what you and the school that your child attends have been working on all along, which is trying to get your child into a way of being that's calm and centered and focused and really understands how to handle routines. They have a sense of how the day, the week flows. So let me go on to number 2. Cheryl, can you talk to us about reactions?
Sure. With reactions, we already talked about the fact that there may be what we think of as adults as unexpected reactions. They may be sad about leaving the end of school. So one of the main things we like to do in Montessori is observe and react based on that. So you need to observe how your child is reacting to some of the common end of year stressors. They may be entering a growth spurt, physical or emotional. A lot of times that's just a time of growth in the summer. There may be new social expectations, either at home. Now you have a child who's able to manage some part of home life, that maybe they're making a meal every day, maybe they're staying by themselves while you go to the grocery store, depending how old they are. Those are new social expectations. Or maybe they're going to camp where they have a new role. There are going to be changes coming when the school year starts. Even if they're in the same classroom, they have different expectations because they've already had time in there, or they're in a whole new classroom or a whole new school. And graduation from the school, whether that's our 18-year-olds graduating or our 6-year-olds graduating, that means that they're entering a whole new place, and they might feel sad about leaving that school behind, even while they're excited for the next event. So really just listening is key for these reactions, and accepting whatever they are.
Great, thanks, Cheryl. Dorothy, would you like to talk about roles?
Sure. So we know that when we go from being one setting and expectations at school, I am defined as teacher, student, leader, whatever the role happens to be, and then the role shifts when summer comes, and sometimes we can be left a little feeling like fluxum. Where do I belong, and what am I supposed to be doing right now? And it becomes an opportunity for us to try on some new roles. So Cheryl kind of alluded to, perhaps there's something new that the child can take on as a new role through the summer. Maybe you're you have pets that need to be cared for, or a beautiful garden that needs to be cared for. And so those are things that are naturally occur in the classrooms. So providing children with those experiences at home is an extension to the role that they had in the classroom. Or maybe they're going to try something brand new that they've never done before. Our roles in the summertime, it's kind of fun to experiment, safely, but experiment with some new roles. Is my new role for the summer going to be perhaps I'm the lawnmower, if that's an age appropriate activity, and with that new responsibility comes a new definition of how I contribute to the family. It could also be met with some anxiety as children start to worry or think about what is coming next. One of the things that is so beautiful about our Montessori environments is that children become very comfortable in their settings. Some children have been in a setting for 3 years. Our little ones in early childhood probably don't have a memory prior to age 3. So they only remember that role that they were as the youngest child in the environment. They became the oldest child in the environment. Now they're very unsure of what the next role is. And sometimes that can be a little, especially when those big leaps happen into lower elementary, middle school, high school. Those can be events that can make parents feel a little anxious as well, that I don't really know what this new role is going to be like. So open communication and as Cassie said, reflecting on successful transitions in the past and successful role shifts may help to support the child, and honest conversation that, yeah, this is kind of unusual. This might be bring up a lot of feelings for us to share with one another.
And this is such a great opportunity, Dorothy, for parents to talk about their different roles, because sometimes kids will see parents as just mom and dad. And I think they have some sort of job, but it would be a great opportunity to start having those conversations, how they have certain roles, and sometimes those roles change. And in Montessori, we really talk about leadership, and these are such great opportunities to help your child explore leadership in different capacities.
Excellent. And I'll handle this one, relationships. So relationships can change as we go through a period of transition. For example, it could be that you've been in one classroom and you're going to have a brand new teacher, or you're going into a summer program and you're going to have new adults in your life. There's going to be other children you're going to have to meet, and you're going to have to form friendships with, or figure out how to get along with people who are really different. Your family may change. I mean, if your older brother goes to a different school and all of a sudden you're all sitting there at home, or if you're at the country cottage, or you go camping together and you're in an RV, or whatever you choose to do, you may have things happening, like your older brother may come home from college and all of a sudden he's back in his room and life is different. So summertime for a child, especially a young child, can be a time of really big changes. There can be, again, as we've said, family changes and different expectations or roles. We're not getting up 7 o'clock in the morning and having to get out the door by 7:30, all fed and washed and scrubbed in our school uniform or our school clothes with a lunchbox packed. It's a different pace. So one of the things that you also want to do is think about relationships that may involve a child saying goodbye. It could be that a teacher is moving on, or they're no longer going to be in that teacher's class, even if they're at the same school. There could be children who were your child's friends who are moving on to another city or another school, or they're just not going to see them. So definitely check in. Don't put words in their mouth, but check in and just, make sure, are you missing anybody? Is there anyone, anything? You look a little sad. Would you like to get together with friend Tom? I'm sure if we contact his parents, we might be able to arrange a play date. So this is just part of the 5 R's.
Tim, can I add something to that? We didn't put that in the list, but don't disregard the relationship with themselves, because a lot of times at the end of school year, there's been a lot of growth, and over the summer, there's going to be continued growth. And so kids are going to start, trying out different personalities or trying different things out. So allow for that to happen. Don't just, keep them in the same old box. This child is athletic, or this child is into the arts. Let them explore. Give them that opportunity to build that relationship with themselves as well.
Jean-Paul
Hi,
shares
John.
with responsibilities and giving agency to our children. As they grow older, we may also give them more responsibilities. So thank you for adding that, Jean-Paul.
All right, let's move on to the next slide. And we have reflections. Cheryl, actually, no, I think Cassie, you started the cycle. Why don't you take this one?
Oh, okay. So reflection, as you know, in Montessori, we love reflection. We feel that that is really what really resonates with children to help them really grow in that spiritual manner, is to just make connections with themselves and with others. So reflection is really important. So asking those questions about, how their school year went. We talked about things that you could do, the museum or a time capsule, but you might want to talk about what was the funnest thing that happened in school, or how are you different? How are you different now than you were at the beginning of the school year. You might want to talk about what you're going to miss about school over the summer, and how can we recreate that, or how can we provide an opportunity so that you can still experience that. You might want to talk about some new friends that they made over the school year and how you're going to keep that partnership going. So there's all different sorts of reflection questions you can ask them. At your family meeting, which you guys hopefully are having, you can discuss what worked in the past as far as summer's concerned. So depending on their age, they should have a say in what happens during their summertime, and ask them, kind of, let's reflect back on what happened last summer and what you remember about it, what things you want to continue doing, and what things didn't really work out. So have them be part of that discussion so that they feel that they have agency about creating their schedule. And it's not just a schedule put upon them and they have to live by it, but they're creating it. And that goes with what we do in a Montessori classroom. We sit down together and we decide what is best interest of all of us as a community. We can also talk about writing things down about what you want to do again at the end of the summer. So after your end of the summer, don't forget to reflect on what worked well and what didn't, so that you have those notes for the following summer to really discuss this, and so you can set up something that's successful and beneficial for everybody. But we're having this webinar now, so you can start thinking about it. Some schools end at the end of May, some schools, end in June. But if you start thinking about it now and you start planning with your children now, then summer doesn't hit and you wake up one morning and think, oh my gosh, what are we going to do this summer? So the earlier you can start planning, the better it will be for all of you. And then also, it's really important to start scheduling in your calendar. Mark, okay, we have 3 weeks out before we start school again. We're going to have a webinar to support you on how to get them transitioned back into school. But it's important that you really make sure that you mark out that time so that you don't find yourself on a Sunday thinking, how am I going to get my teenage kids up at 7 o'clock today when they've been sleeping till noon? So it's important to just schedule that in and keep yourself mindful. You don't really want to talk about it a lot throughout, especially with younger kids. They don't have a lot of concept of time. So if you're constantly reminding them of the new school year, it's not always beneficial. So giving yourself that quality time to discuss that next transition is really important.
Excellent. Anyone want to add anything?
I like that. I missed part of it, so I'm not sure if we talked about it, but a lot of times you can have special things that you do at transitions. So like we talked about gifts for teachers at the end of the year. We always made special cookies to start the school year, to put in lunches. And we would kind of have some at the beginning of the summer, we would have some friends from the neighborhood over. So some things that marked the beginning of those transitions, that was something they could look forward to, and as much as possible stayed the same until their transitions took them other places.
I love that. I love the idea of ceremony and kicking off a summer or closing up a summer. I think that is really important. But also talking about reflections, I think it'll surprise some parents what your kids remember and what they're holding in their hearts. And so you might think to yourself, oh, we planned this huge, this huge trip. And what they remember is, again, being woken up in the, middle of the morning to go fishing with their dad. So getting their feedback is so important, because you might think that you're providing this great experience, which you are, but they might needing something else. So observe, listen, ask, reflect, and get their feedback to help create their summer together.
And don't forget that even if it's the same for you, for those of us who work year round, summer's not all that different, but it is different for them if they've left their classroom, or even if they're at the same school for a summer camp, it's still different. So you need to think of these transitions, because some people aren't going to summer camp at school. Maybe there's a different teacher, they have different activities. And so there's still some difference that you kind of need to reflect. And for most of us, we have more daylight hours. So we tend to kind of be able to relax more in the evening outside or go for a walk or play or something.
So we just want to thank you for joining us. I mean, this is a fairly simple topic. We invite you, by the way, to chime in. We'd love to know where you are in the world. And we'd love to know if you found this useful or if you have any questions or comments. I mean, summer is coming up if you're in the Northern Hemisphere. If you're in the Southern Hemisphere, the winter break is getting ready to start soon. And wherever you are, no matter how young or old your child is or are, there are probably going to be things coming up in the next few weeks that will be different, whether you're in Maryland or Washington, D.C. or Philadelphia, where probably there'll be another week or two into June, or in some parts of the world where you probably only have 6 weeks somewheres during the heat of the summer. There's no one way to do this, but they all involve transitions. So thank you very much for joining us. We want to point out that on May 17th, we have coming up Recognize and Help Manage Your Child's Anxiety with Marilyn Perlman. If you've never heard Marilyn Perlman present, you're going to have a great time. She is really a great person to have be on this show and to join us. I've known Marilyn a lot of years. She's a hoot. You're going to like it. On May 24th, Lorna has scheduled a turn. I can't wait for school to start again. Or I don't want summer to end. Either way you look at it, it's coming and it's going to happen before you know it. Any last words, Dorothy?
So as we were talking about reflections, and I was helping my mother clean out some old things, and we found some sacks, just old brown paper sacks that I had stashed things into and wrote on the cover of from a family vacation. And I hadn't thought of it in years until you started and until we started talking about reflections. But it was a fun way to kind of organize artifacts of the summer. And then I think it would be great fun to organize your, to have a place to gather your artifacts. So when we get deep into, especially those of us who are living perhaps in northern and cold winters, to dig out those artifacts and reflect on what the summer meant to you by the seashell in the bag or the postcard from somewhere visited. So there's lots of ways to collect your summer to then feed your soul in the middle of winter as well.
That's such a good point. Go ahead, Cheryl.
We liked to do photo books when my kids were younger, so we would take pictures of those things rather than have them. We don't have a lot of storage space, so a photo book worked better where we could just store it on the shelf, and we would take pictures of them. They were really active in making them, and that was really fun for transition because you don't get them right away. So that was something to look forward to, that was kind of bridging the two in our summer to school or school to summer, because we would do the same thing with those art projects and school activities. We would take some and make a photo album.
I just had a couple things to say. One is I'm in the middle of a transition to summer in Arizona, and I am trying to embrace it. And it's very hard for me. Second is don't forget to utilize your Montessori guides and if you have an opportunity to speak to them, a lot of times there's end of the year conferences and they can help you with transitions, because as Tim said earlier, you don't want to lose some of that progress. And I'm not talking about getting lots of work or academic work for the summer, but they might be able to tell you, if you continue to do this throughout the summer, they're going to gain some strengths, they're going to gain some tools. And that's always so helpful, because you want them to be ready and prepared for the new year. So you want to have them continue doing what is working well for them during the school year. And the second thing is try not to assume that your child is going to do well with the transition or not do well. I hear that often from parents. Oh, my child will be fine. They'll be fine when they transition. And that's not always true. So just again, keep an open mind, keep an open heart, and make sure you're observing, you're listening, you're asking for feedback.
Perfect. I want to thank everyone and remind you this is brought to you by the Montessori Foundation, which is the sponsor of our parents organization worldwide, the Montessori Family Alliance. If you're not a member of the Montessori Family Alliance yet and you're a parent, we invite you to look at joining us. You can go to montessori.org, www.montessori.org, and just go to parents, join the MFA or Montessori Family Alliance, and you'll find that there's a lot there beyond attending these free webcasts. We are here to help. Thank you. We'll see you all next week. Thank you, my friends.
Thank you. Thank you.